August 16, 1973. A scorching Thursday in McAlester, Oklahoma. Inside the Oklahoma State Penitentiary, OSP for short, the air was thick. Not just with summer heat, but with tension, resentment, and something harder to name. For months, maybe years, the place had been building toward something ugly. The food was spoiled and meager. The water ran brown when it ran at all. Medical care? You were lucky if they gave you aspirin. And the guards? Either overwhelmed or didn't care. Some were worse than the inmates. Whispered threats, broken noses, accidents that never got written up. And the prisoners? They were watching, waiting, boiling. OSP wasn't just broken. It was prehistoric. A dungeon. Built in 1908, it looked like something out of a medieval film. Cold stone walls, Gothic towers, iron bars, so rusted they flaked like old skin. During the summer, the cells turned into ovens. Some had no toilets, just buckets. The plumbing constantly failed, flooding tiers with sewage. The ventilation was a joke. It smelled like sweat and despair. Fights were a daily ritual. Stabbings over debts, gang beefs, or nothing at all. Overcrowding pushed tensions to the edge. By the early 70s, the place held nearly double its capacity. Guards were stretched thin. Entire cell blocks were unofficially run by inmate enforcers. The prison was a powder keg. And then it lit. That Thursday, during lunch, a scuffle broke out in the mess hall. It should have been just another scrap. But this time, it spiraled fast. Chairs flew. Trays clattered. Someone screamed. A warning shot rang out. Or maybe it was the first real one. In the confusion, someone got hold of a set of keys. Doors opened. And in a matter of minutes, the whole facility tipped off the edge. For the next 72 hours, the Oklahoma State Penitentiary didn't belong to the state. It belonged to the inmates. Flames rose from nearly every tier. Mattresses were soaked in lighter fluid and ignited, sending black smoke curling into the sky. Windows shattered. Fires raged. Drivers on nearby roads saw the smoke and assumed an industrial accident. It was no accident. It was a statement. Inmates moved fast. They took 22 hostages, guards, maintenance workers, a priest, even a few civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Some were tied up. Others were surprisingly well treated. Inmate medics offered first aid. Food and water were shared. This wasn't blind rage. It was controlled chaos. Amid that chaos, something unusual emerged, a council. Inmates from rival racial groups, black, white, Latino, Native, sat down together and formed a people's tribunal. It was something almost no one expected. Unity. They issued demands. Not ransom, not escape. Demands for better medical care, for working toilets, for an end to constant beatings, for access to books, education, dignity. It wasn't just about conditions. It was about being treated as human. The tribunal communicated with the governor's office. They spoke through intermediaries, journalists, lawyers, even a few brave clergy. For a brief, extraordinary window, the power dynamic flipped. The state had to listen. Outside the gates, reporters gathered. Cameras rolled. The world stared in through the razor wire and for once saw inmates not as monsters, but as men. Angry men, yes, but also organized, thoughtful, demanding justice. It couldn't last. On the third day, the state cracked down. National Guardsmen in riot gear circled the facility. Helicopters roared overhead. Tear gas canisters crashed through broken windows. Armed teams stormed in from all sides. What had been a tenuous peace dissolved into violence. Many inmates surrendered immediately. Others resisted and paid for it. Reports would later surface of men beaten in hallways, of prisoners dragged unconscious from their cells. Some were never seen again. Official records listed 3 dead. Inmate testimony suggested more. Bodies buried in silence. And then, nothing. The riot was shut down, locked away, in memory. Investigations stalled. Reports were edited or lost. The People's Tribunal disbanded. Its leaders thrown into solitary or shipped to other prisons. No meaningful reforms came. No upgrades. No policy shifts. Just silence. The McAlester riot became a ghost, spoken of in murmurs, buried under layers of bureaucracy and shame. It was easier for Oklahoma to forget than to face what it revealed. But those who lived it didn't forget. In the years that followed, survivors gave interviews, quietly, cautiously. Some still bore scars. Some still had nightmares. One man spoke of hearing a fellow inmate scream for help while flames crept toward his cell. Another described a moment of unity. Men who'd hated each other days before now fighting side by side to protect the hostages. Somewhere in a dusty archive or the back room of a university library are transcripts of interviews, yellowed photos, and a few surviving pages of a manifesto drafted during the takeover. A blueprint for prison reform written in fire and blood. Buried in oral histories and whispered recollections is the truth. The McAlester riot wasn't chaos for chaos's sake. It was a scream for dignity, a declaration of pain built not from impulse, but from years of silent abuse. These were not madmen. They were men pushed to a limit by squalor, violence, and neglect. And when their moment came, they didn't just burn the prison. They lit a flare meant to pierce the darkness around them. For 3 days, they forced the world to look, not at their crimes, but at their conditions. And in doing so, they shattered the illusion that prison walls could hide the truth forever. It was a moment when the invisible refused to stay invisible, and in that refusal, demanded to be remembered. The fires were extinguished. The smoke cleared, but the injustice never did. What sparked a McAlester didn't end with the ash. It lingered in policy failures, in the hollow promises that followed, in the quiet shuffling of responsibility from one department to the next. For the men who lived through it, the system remained just as brutal, just as indifferent. The riot was a signal flare that faded too quickly, ignored by those in power and remembered only by those left behind the bars. Its legacy didn't come with reform, it came with silence. In the next episode, we go deep into the blood-soaked legacy of Louisiana's most infamous prison, Angola. But this time, it's not a story of riots or escape. It's about a man with a pen behind the walls of Cell Block D who dared to speak. From death row to the editor's desk, Wilbert Rideau became the voice of a place built to crush voices. Before the system would let him go, he had to expose it, page by page,